Have you ever wondered why the most feared creatures in all of Tamriel are actually complete idiots? I mean, think about it. Dragons in Skyrim are supposed to be these ancient, all-powerful beings with intelligence that spans millennia. Yet they consistently make choices that would embarrass a mud crab. These are creatures that ruled the world for thousands of years, commanded armies of dragon priests, and built an entire civilization around their dominance. But the moment you show up with a rusty iron sword and leather armor, they decide the best strategy is to hover 20 feet above your head and breathe fire at the ground next to you. It's like watching a chess grandmaster suddenly forget how pawns work. But here's where it gets really interesting. The more you dig into Skyrim's lore, the more you realize that dragons aren't just poorly designed enemies. They're fundamentally broken on every conceivable level. Their behavior contradicts everything we know about their supposed intelligence. Their combat tactics would make a saber cat laugh. And don't even get me started on their relationship with the world around them. I've spent countless hours studying these magnificent disasters, and what I've discovered will completely change how you see every dragon encounter in the game. We're talking about creatures that can supposedly see through time itself, yet somehow never see that rock you're hiding behind. Dragons that can speak in a language so powerful it can bend reality, but can't figure out how to land properly without getting stuck in a tree. By the end of this deep dive, you'll understand exactly why Skyrim's dragons are simultaneously the most terrifying and most ridiculous creatures in all of gaming. And trust me, once you see what I'm about to show you, you'll never look at a dragon the same way again. So let's start with the most obvious problem: dragon intelligence. According to the lore, dragons are supposed to be incredibly intelligent beings. Paternax, the old dragon on the throat of the world, speaks like some kind of ancient philosopher. He contemplates the nature of existence, discusses complex moral concepts, and demonstrates wisdom that comes from millennia of experience. The game constantly tells us that dragons are smart, cunning, and capable of long-term planning. But then you encounter literally any other dragon in the game, and they behave like they have the strategic thinking of a particularly aggressive chicken. Watch any dragon fight, and you'll see what I mean. They'll fly in predictable circles, land in the exact same spots repeatedly, and use the same attack patterns over and over again. It's like they attended the Imperial Strategy Academy and slept through every single class. Here's a perfect example. You're walking along a road minding your own business, when suddenly you hear that distinctive wing-flapping sound. A dragon appears, circles overhead a few times, and then lands directly in front of you. Not behind you where you can't see it coming. Not on a cliff where it has the high ground advantage. Right in front of you, at ground level, where you can hack away at its ankles with whatever weapon you happen to be carrying. Think about this from the dragon's perspective. You're an ancient being with the power of flight, supernatural strength, and magical breath attacks. You've spotted a tiny humanoid walking alone on a road. What's your optimal strategy? Maybe attack from above where they can't reach you? Perhaps use your superior mobility to strike and retreat? Or how about using your thuum to knock them off a cliff? Nope. The dragon's brilliant plan is to land right next to you and engage in what essentially amounts to a slap fight. It's like watching a fighter jet decide to land on a runway, so it can have a fist fight with a guy holding a stick. And this isn't just a gameplay convenience thing. The dragons in Skyrim are supposed to be driven by their nature to dominate and assert their superiority. They're not just mindless beasts attacking on instinct. They're intelligent creatures making conscious tactical decisions, which makes their consistently terrible decision-making even more baffling. But wait, it gets worse. Let's talk about dragon breath attacks. These are supposed to be devastating magical assaults that can level buildings and incinerate entire armies. The lore tells us that dragons once used their thuum to reshape landscapes and topple civilizations. You'd think that kind of power would be pretty effective against a single person wearing leather armor. Yet somehow, dragon breath attacks in Skyrim are about as threatening as a really aggressive sneeze. You can literally stand there and tank multiple breath attacks without even breaking a sweat. I've watched dragons breathe fire directly at me for 30 seconds straight. And the most dangerous part was getting a slight sunburn. The dragons seem to have this weird obsession with breathing at the ground around you rather than actually aiming at you. It's like they're trying to warm up the dirt for some reason. Maybe they think you'll be so impressed by their landscaping skills that you'll just give up and go home. And here's the really crazy part. When dragons do manage to hit you with their breath attacks, the damage is laughably small compared to what you'd expect from a creature that supposedly once ruled the world. A dragon's fire breath does less damage than getting punched by a regular bandit. Think about that. A magical attack from an ancient supernatural being is less effective than some random guy with his fists. This becomes even more ridiculous when you consider that dragons are supposed to be naturally resistant to their own element. Fire dragons should be immune to fire. Ice dragons should be immune to ice, and so on. Yet somehow, these same dragons that are supposedly masters of their respective elements can barely manage to use those elements effectively against a single opponent. But let's dig deeper into the tactical failures. Dragons have wings. They can fly. This should give them an enormous advantage in any combat situation. They can attack from angles that ground-based enemies can't defend against. They can retreat when injured and return when they've recovered. They can use hit-and-run tactics that would make them nearly impossible to defeat without specialized equipment. Instead, dragons in Skyrim seem to view their ability to fly as more of a mild inconvenience than a tactical advantage. They'll fly around for a few seconds, maybe breathe some fire at random locations, and then immediately land and start fighting like they're just really big, really angry lizards. It's like they forgot they had wings the moment combat started. Even when they do stay airborne, their flight patterns are completely predictable. They fly in the same circles, at the same altitude, following the same routes every single time. Any halfway competent military strategist would be able to set up an ambush that would make short work of them. It's like they're following a flight plan written by someone who's never heard of the concept of unpredictability. And don't even get me started on their landing choices. Dragons will consistently land in the worst possible positions for themselves. They'll land in narrow valleys where they can't maneuver properly. They'll land near rocks and trees that block their own attacks. They'll land on slopes where they can't maintain proper footing. It's like they're actively trying to put themselves at a disadvantage. The most infuriating part is that the game gives you all the tools you need to exploit these terrible tactical decisions. You can hide behind rocks that are barely big enough to cover your torso, and the dragon will act like you've become completely invisible. You can stand on a small hill, and the dragon will land at the bottom and try to breathe fire upward at you, as if it doesn't understand how physics works. This brings us to perhaps the most damning evidence of dragon stupidity: their complete inability to adapt to changing circumstances. A truly intelligent creature would learn from its mistakes. If breathing fire at someone hiding behind a rock doesn't work the first time, maybe try a different approach. If landing in front of your opponent keeps resulting in you getting stabbed repeatedly, maybe consider staying airborne. But dragons in Skyrim never learn. They'll use the same failed tactics over and over again, as if they're stuck in some kind of tactical loop that they can't break out of. It's like watching someone try to open a door by repeatedly walking into it, never once considering that maybe they should try turning the handle. This becomes even more absurd when you realize that dragons are supposed to have perfect memory. They remember everything that's ever happened to them across thousands of years of existence. Yet somehow, they can't remember that the exact same tactic failed spectacularly just 5 minutes ago when they fought that other adventurer down the road. Speaking of memory, Let's talk about dragon speech patterns and how they completely contradict their supposed intelligence. When dragons speak, they're using the Thuum, the ancient dragon language that's so powerful it can literally reshape reality. This isn't just talking. It's weaponized linguistics. Every word carries the weight of absolute authority and magical power. But listen to what dragons actually say during combat, and you'll start to question whether these creatures have ever had an original thought in their entire existence. They have exactly 3 things to say, and they repeat them endlessly like some kind of broken record player. They'll roar about how you're beneath them, how they're going to destroy you, and how they're the ultimate predator. That's it. That's their entire vocabulary during combat. For creatures that supposedly have thousands of years of accumulated wisdom and experience, their trash talk is remarkably uninspired. You'd think beings that have witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations would have something more interesting to say than the equivalent of "I'm gonna get you." It's like listening to the world's most ancient and powerful beings communicate with the emotional complexity of an angry toddler. And here's where it gets really weird. Dragons can apparently understand complex concepts like philosophy, morality, and the nature of existence when the plot demands it. But the moment combat starts, they suddenly lose the ability to form coherent sentences beyond basic threats. It's like they have 2 completely different brains, and the smart one takes a coffee break whenever fighting begins. This selective intelligence extends to their understanding of the world around them. Dragons are supposed to be deeply connected to the fabric of reality itself. They can sense the flow of time, understand the fundamental nature of existence, and perceive things that mortal minds can't even comprehend. Yet somehow, they consistently fail to notice obvious environmental hazards. Watch a dragon try to navigate around a simple tree, and you'll see what I mean. These creatures that can supposedly perceive the very essence of reality will get stuck on a branch like they've never encountered solid objects before. They'll try to fly through mountains, get confused by basic architecture, and somehow manage to crash into things that have been standing in the same spot for hundreds of years. It's particularly hilarious when you consider that dragons are supposed to have been around when most of these landmarks were built. They should know the terrain better than anyone. Yet they navigate the world like tourists with a broken map and a complete inability to ask for directions. But perhaps the most damning evidence of dragon incompetence comes from their complete failure to work together. Dragons are supposed to be the ultimate apex predators. They once ruled the world through superior organization and coordination. They had hierarchies, territories, and complex social structures that allowed them to maintain dominance over entire continents. Yet in Skyrim, dragons seem to have forgotten that cooperation exists. You'll never see 2 dragons working together to take down a single target. They don't coordinate their attacks, share information, or even acknowledge each other's existence. It's like they've all developed the social skills of particularly antisocial hermits. This is especially bizarre because the game establishes that dragons are returning to the world after being absent for thousands of years. You'd think they'd be eager to reconnect with their own kind, share information about how the world has changed, and maybe coordinate their efforts to reclaim their former dominance. Instead, they act like each dragon is the only dragon in existence. Even more ridiculous is how they handle threats to their own survival. Dragons are supposed to be immortal beings with an instinctive understanding of their own mortality. They should recognize that the return of the Dragonborn represents an existential threat to their entire species. This should trigger some kind of survival response, maybe even cooperation between dragons that normally wouldn't work together. But no, dragons continue to face the Dragonborn one at a time, using the same failed tactics that got their predecessors killed. It's like watching lemmings with wings and an attitude problem. They seem completely incapable of learning from the experiences of other dragons even when those experiences involve getting their souls absorbed by someone who's clearly hunting them specifically. This brings us to another massive problem with dragon behavior: their complete inability to recognize patterns or learn from observation. Dragons are supposed to be able to see across vast distances and perceive things that mortals can't. They should be able to watch other dragons fighting and learn from their successes and failures. Instead, each dragon approaches every encounter like it's the first time anyone has ever fought anything. They don't seem to understand that certain tactics consistently fail, that certain opponents are more dangerous than others, or that maybe, just maybe, they should try something different when the standard approach results in immediate death. The most infuriating part is that dragons have access to information that should make them incredibly effective opponents. They can fly high enough to survey entire regions. They can observe human settlements, study their defenses, and identify weak points. They should be able to plan coordinated attacks that would be impossible to defend against. But dragons in Skyrim seem to use their superior vantage point and intelligence-gathering capabilities to accomplish absolutely nothing. They'll fly over a heavily fortified city, see all the guards and defensive positions, and then decide that the best plan is to land in the middle of the marketplace and start a fair fight. It's like they're actively choosing the most difficult possible approach to every situation. This extends to their understanding of human psychology and behavior. Dragons are supposed to have observed human civilization for millennia. They should understand how humans think, what motivates them, and how to exploit their weaknesses. They once ruled over humans through a combination of fear, intimidation, and political manipulation. Yet modern dragons seem to have forgotten everything they once knew about human nature. They don't use psychological warfare. They don't exploit human fears or weaknesses. And they don't even seem to understand basic concepts like morale or intimidation. They just show up and start fighting, as if brute force is the only tool in their arsenal. This is particularly absurd when you consider that dragons supposedly have perfect recall of their experiences with the ancient dragon cult. They remember commanding armies of fanatical worshippers who would die at their command. They remember the political intrigue, the manipulation, the careful balance of fear and reverence that kept entire civilizations under their control. But somehow, when facing a single adventurer, they completely forget about concepts like psychological warfare or strategic thinking. They don't even try to intimidate you beyond roaring really loudly, which is about as effective as a toddler throwing a tantrum. It's like they've collectively decided that thousands of years of accumulated wisdom about dominance and control are completely irrelevant to modern combat. And let's not forget about their relationship with the Thu'um itself. Dragons are supposed to be the masters of the voice, the originators of this reality-bending power. Their entire language is built around the concept that speaking is a form of magic, that words have the power to reshape the world according to their will. Yet dragons in Skyrim use their Thu'um like they're reading from a children's picture book. They have access to shouts that can stop time, summon storms, and tear holes in reality itself. But instead of using these godlike powers creatively, they stick to the same three basic shouts over and over again: fire breath, ice breath, and that knockdown shout that barely moves you 2 feet. It's like giving someone a nuclear weapon and watching them use it as a really expensive paperweight. These creatures have the power to fundamentally alter the laws of physics, but they use it to accomplish what a moderately aggressive house cat could do with its claws. The worst part is that the game occasionally shows us glimpses of what dragons could be capable of when they actually use their intelligence. Paarthurnax demonstrates philosophical depth and strategic thinking. Alduin shows moments of genuine cunning and long-term planning. But these examples only make the regular dragons look even more incompetent by comparison. It's like the game is saying, look, dragons can be intelligent and threatening when we need them to be for the plot. But the rest of the time, they're just going to act like flying anger management cases with learning disabilities. This inconsistency becomes even more glaring when you realize that every dragon you encounter is supposedly thousands of years old. They've had millennia to perfect their combat techniques, develop new strategies, and learn from their experiences. Yet somehow, they're all worse at fighting than bandits who probably learned their skills last week. Even their basic understanding of cause and effect seems fundamentally broken. Dragons will repeatedly use tactics that obviously don't work, as if they're incapable of connecting the failure of their approach to the need for a different strategy. It's like watching someone try to fix a broken television by hitting it with the same hammer in the same spot over and over again, while genuinely expecting different results. But perhaps the most damning evidence of dragon incompetence is their complete inability to recognize their own limitations. A truly intelligent creature would understand its strengths and weaknesses, adapt its tactics accordingly, and avoid situations where it's at a disadvantage. Dragons in Skyrim seem to have no self-awareness whatsoever. They'll consistently put themselves in situations where their advantages are negated and their weaknesses are exposed. They'll fight in confined spaces where they can't maneuver properly. They'll land in areas where their breath attacks are blocked by terrain. They'll engage in close combat with opponents who are clearly better suited for that type of fighting. It's like they've never heard of the concept of playing to your strengths. These creatures have the power of flight, magical breath attacks, and supernatural durability, but they consistently choose to fight like they're just really big, really stupid, ground-based animals. So there you have it. Skyrim's dragons are supposed to be ancient, intelligent, and terrifying, but they're actually just flying examples of poor game design, wrapped in epic music and impressive visual effects. They're creatures that should be apex predators, but behave like they're competing for the title of most incompetent mythical beast in gaming history. The next time you encounter a dragon in Skyrim, don't think of it as a battle between you and an ancient force of nature. Think of it as a mercy killing. You're not defeating a mighty opponent. You're putting a confused ancient creature out of its misery. Because honestly, after thousands of years of making the same tactical mistakes over and over again, they probably welcome the sweet release of having their soul absorbed by someone who actually knows what they're doing. And that's the real tragedy of Skyrim's dragons. They could have been incredible opponents that challenged players to think strategically and adapt to intelligent, unpredictable enemies. Instead, they're just flying piñatas that occasionally remember they have wings. It's like watching Shakespeare performed by a troupe of particularly dramatic golden retrievers. Impressive to look at, but you can't help feeling like something important got lost in translation.